Once again, welcome to another edition of The Stray with Jay. I know you guys have missed me. It's been about 7 years, but I had to give it some time. There was a lot going on. Me and my wife got about 3 kids in my absence. I had school, I had like 7 assignments in like 3 weeks. So I've been packed. And like they hear the show is hitting up. So a lot of persons were blocking my progress, behaving like Apple. But anyway, I digress. But people are always asking me, yo, what are your favorite books? Why you like this book? What are some of the best books that you've read? And it's a whole long list. So I feel as though I'm compelled to do such an episode. I'm gonna start you off with the first one, As a Man Thinketh. It's a very beautiful book. It shows you how man behave, and it shows the reader that everything we do in life is equated to the way we think. Our health is highly dependent on how we think. For example, you wouldn't eat certain food if you thought those foods are bad. Unless you're like really, really sick and somebody convince you that those food that you think is bad is really, really good. For example, broccoli. You ain't eating broccoli. But like I said, a lot of what we do is heavily dependent on how we think. Another special book is The Richest Man in Babylon. Oh my God. It's a book about finance literacy and financial wisdom. It's a very, very beautiful book. One of the most beautiful lessons out of The Richest Man in Babylon is the fact that he showed you that whenever you draw pay, you should use some of that money to pay yourself for the job that you would have just extended over the course of the period that you was paid for. So in the book, he said, out of your salary or out of the money you earn, you should take 1/10 of that and pay yourself. So if you're making 100,000, 10,000 goes to yourself, obviously. And then he says 2/10 of that is used to pay any outstanding debt that you have. It helps you to manage your money more wisely. Why would you earning 100,000 and your debts is like 50 and 40,000 like me? I make like 80,000 and me debts is be like 40. So you definitely know you're buying all the rich. Not true. I make a lot of money and I ain't got no debt. But that's another conversation. Saving your money doesn't make you rich. Nobody gets rich by just saving the money. It might amass a certain amount of money over a period of time to do something with it, but it doesn't make you more money. So what he was saying is that the money that you would actually save, use that to work for you. So if you have like $50,000 remaining, instead of putting that in the bank, invest that in something that would bring in more than that 50,000 that you would have expended that money on. The Green Book by Muammar Gaddafi. Beautiful book. A lot of persons tend to think that, democracy is the way and democracy is the best. Now, I'm not here to present democracy to you and say democracy is bad. I think even Socrates himself had an issue with democracy, even though he did suggest that democracy might be the best system, but he was never pro-democratic as well. So, the whole point of the book is, the whole point of me saying that is that, Muammar Gaddafi was not in the traditional sense a democratic as the Western leaders might present what is democracy to us. If we are to use a system, he would come across as more of a socialist. But under Muammar Gaddafi, you're talking about Libya being one of the leading economies. You're talking about education being free from nursery straight onto tertiary. You talk about every citizen being housed, especially if you get married, you get a house and a land right away. You're talking about people being able to go to school in transportation. You're talking about free electricity, free light. You're talking about so many good things. The Green Book showed me a different side of politics. It helped me understand that, look, why leaders don't necessarily choose certain route. Like, for example, in a democratic sense as we get it here, democracy might not mean freedom and lovingness for everybody. It might just mean a mutual benefit for those that win. But what happened to the poor persons? You know, a lot of the policies that are implemented might not be what's best for the country, but if those policies are best for the party, then that policy get pushed to the forefront, actually gets passed and become a country governing policy, whereas it will only benefit 40, even 60%. But if you benefit 60%, you're talking about 40% of people that's going to be disenfranchised by law. For example, if the country is 100,000 people strong and you have a policy that will affect 60 persons, you're talking about 60,000, you're talking about 40,000 persons that will now be scattered hell and bent to go somewhere. So a very good example of that is the abandonment of the sugar estate by the APNU AFC government. We can argue economically whether that makes sense or not, but the social economic factors of a closing of an estate will have very bad negatives. You're talking about suicide rates. Most of those were among men who are going to lead those families. And you know, all of these things have these kind of impacts. So while a democracy might be good, the Green Book helped me understand that representative democracy, especially, it ignores a lot of the other cries of a society. Muammar Gaddafi said, what, what separates a man from a woman? A woman could build a house, a man could build a house, a man could kick a ball, a woman could kick a ball. There is nothing that separates a man from a woman, in that whatever a man can do, a woman can do. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think God gave man no superior power. However, the wisdom in that is understanding that the reason all of us aren't men, or the reason all of us aren't women, is because there is a dependent variable there. We all need each other. And the fact that we are man and the fact that we are women shows us, or should tell us, that there is just some roles that, you know, we play that may differ from each other. Whatever that role is another conversation. So now I have to give you guys my final two books. Now this is very hard. Before I get into my final two books, let me shout out some books that definitely didn't get talked about enough. The Art of Seduction, Develos book. Very good book. You should read it. You know, it's a phenomenal book, and it's, you know, a little bit more than just seduction. It helps you to understand that, you know, in having a partner, it takes more than just, you know, having a partner or saying nice things to actually get across your message to them. The 48 Laws of Power is actually a very, 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 very good book. It shows you how human beings hold power over each other in so many different ways that we don't even know. And, you know, sometimes you just need that power back. You know, so shout out to the 48 Laws of Power. Shout out to the Art of Seduction. Definitely didn't make my top books. The Art of War is a phenomenal, phenomenal book. I don't know if you guys can see, but When China Rules the World, I started it. It didn't make my top 5 because I definitely didn't read it out. But it's a very beautiful book, and it helped me to understand what's actually happening in terms of how Asians see the world and the culture and the civilization and, you know, the politics, every single thing. It's a very good book. How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. It's a book written by Guyanese Walter Rodney, who was killed in a bomb that the Commission of Inquiry said laid the feet of blame at the PNC regime for Barnum. That was a Commission of Inquiry initiated by the previous government in APNU AFC. But how Europe Underdeveloped Africa showed me how people can underdevelop you. You know, how people can keep you from developing, how people can keep you from becoming the best version of yourself, especially in the international realm. You know, it helped me to understand what neocolonialism is or was, and it helped me to understand imperialism and imperialism. I know many of us think that, you know, getting independence means so much good things for our country. But like we have learned from our own experience as an independent nation, being independent has so many ripple effects. Post independence, countries would trade with their colonial masters and send all the resources there. When I become independent, I'm now looking to go into new markets, or even if I'm looking to keep the same relationship with my mother country, but my mother country is definitely not willing to keep that same relation with me because it would enrich my country. So right away, if she stops trading with me, or if that trade route is diminished, I make less money just on going there. I now have to find new markets who already is exploring newer markets. So if England is not buying my sugar anymore, who is going to buy my sugar? And what is the guarantee that they will pay the price England was paying? They probably going to pay less, knowing that I just lose my cash crop, which is exactly why a lot of nations end up losing after countries outdo themselves with sugar. You look at Brazil, which actually turned a big sugar country now by producing more sugar than less of what it would cost for traditional English societies in the Caribbean. So, there are many ways countries can make you not independent, even by you asking for your own independence. There's a already international community who will ensure that whatever you're striving to achieve is not met based on boycotting some of your products or just boycotting your countries as well, even with or without sanctions. And it helped me to understand the way Africa is, and it showed us development in a different aspect, because development is a relative term. What you might call development might not be what I might call development. I might have a well functioning democracy, but I don't have a police force to enforce certain laws, or to be so strict on civilians for doing certain things. That doesn't make me uncivilized or underdeveloped. Relative to what might be happening in your country, you could say I'm not as developed as you are. But then from my angle, it could also be that you are not developed as I am, because why would you need to point a gun and arrest a man when he should know what is the right thing to do? So it helped me to, it is a really beautiful book. And I wish some of us can really get an opportunity to read that book. My favorite book, and I kid you not, my favorite book is a book by Niccolo Machiavelli. It's called The Prince. It's probably a lot of persons' favorite book. And the reason the book is so favorite is that, one, Machiavelli wrote this book when he was isolated and in prison, and he wrote it for the person who imprisoned him. Machiavelli was a diplomat, and he was telling the ruler at the time how to deal with new territories, how to deal with newfound land, how to deal with your population. What is it you need to keep power? It's really a power-based book. But the book is so phenomenal that it stretches into so many aspects of life. And if you're into politics like I am, Niccolo Machiavelli would be so beautiful. For example, I was telling my friends them in Paul 100 that the coalition government was already on its way out prior to the no confidence motion. These are things that you could have seen based on what you've read from the book. Like, for example, part of the book, The Prince, Machiavelli said no prudent leader would give a man power who helped him to gain power. Because having seen all the power that the person accumulated or has on giving you that power, it could be threatening to the man who now rule. So what they will do is, kind of silence that person, for a better word. You obviously know what it is. But, when I read that, all I could have seen was Sharma Solomon, and I told him about it. I said, Granger won, and you were a very big part of why the coalition won. But then, not that they didn't give him no position, but they gave him a role that diminished what he actually represented to an entire community. So what you have in 2020 was pretty foreseeable on my behalf. Another issue that I came across in Niccolo Machiavelli's book was where he said people might vote for change, people might pick up arms and trying and against the ruler, wanting change, but then afterwards come to the realization that that change is not what they wanted, and you kind of think of things like 2015 where most of the persons in the country wanted change, so they changed the government to APNU AFC. But then we realized under the APNU AFC for what it was, a lot of persons became disgruntled, like, nah, this is not what we want. So now we're in a PPP era. And for whatever that is, some persons are still like, nah, that's not what we want. So, it shows you that, people might want change, but they might not necessarily realize what that change is. Another very good lesson that's taken from the Prince that a lot of persons might not know, that was taken from the Prince, was the question, to be feared or to be loved. Machiavelli said it was, as a leader, it's wise to rather to be feared than to be loved, right? However, no, he said, well, I'm trying to get it correct. He said a wise leader will always choose to be respected and feared rather than to be loved. But he also went on to say it is better to be loved in the end. So, there's so many lessons from Niccolo Machiavelli's book. Another beautiful lesson, and I kid you not, I haven't read his book in like 3 years. Niccolo Machiavelli said, never choose flattery over the truth. He said, always choose to be truthful at. Yo, it's so beautiful. And when you think of it, you'd rather somebody say, oh, you're so beautiful, I've never seen someone so beautiful in my life. Or would you rather a man say, babes, you're not the most beautiful girl in the world, but you are the most beautiful girl in the world to me, or something like that. I didn't get it right. It's like, we got cut out. But, the choosing to hear the truth is so much satisfying than choosing to be flattered. You exclude yourself from being lied to. It saves you a lot of heartbreak and traumas. And it doesn't necessarily have to be heartbreak. It could be your brother or your mother saying, look, Jafar, I didn't want you, but you're here and I appreciate you. Rather than telling you, I always want you, you're the love of my life, you're the best son. Knowing deep down in your heart, I really wish you dead or I didn't want you. So those are some beautiful, beautiful lesson. And I kid you not, if you ever get the chance to read any book, let it be The Prince. And there you have it, guys. My top 5 books for right now, because I haven't read all the books that I want to read. So it's definitely my top 5 books for right now. If you ever get the chance to get any one of those books, buy them. Do not ask me in the comments for any of my books. I'm very strict with it. I don't lend it. People don't bring back in books. And a wise man once said, only fools share their books. So think about that one.